Hello friends, I am Rahat Hassan, Assistant Professor in the Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Before going to start our lecture, I would like to welcome you all in this particular online course on international relations in a changing world. Already we have completed some classes on the topic related to international relations, theoretical aspect of the international relations, and also meaning, nature and scope of international relations. Why we study international relations, how we study international relations, and what we study in international relations. Today, I am going to speak on a very important topic, rather a very important theoretical topic to understand international relations. It is international society approach to understand, to explain the dynamics of international relations. So, what will we do today? We will just try to understand the basic things which is essential to understand or to explain this particular tradition of international relations or theory of international relations, that is international society approach. In doing so, we will try to understand the basic themes or the key concept of international society and certain values which are there to understand the theoretical conception of international society, order and justice. And in addition to that order and justice, another important element that we need to understand is the responsibility of the statecrafts. And then we will critically analyze international society approach to discuss and to explain international relation. So, these are the things, that is the structure of this particular class, and we will try to explain one by one just to understand the concept of international society approach, to understand and to explain international society approach. So, in order to understand that international society approach, we need to know the historical background, why that school or why that tradition to understand international relations emerged. In that sense, we have to take or we have to understand the another classical approach, that is realism and liberalism, another school of thought or theory to explain or to know international relation. International society approach or international society tradition of international relations, also known as or also sometimes referred as English school tradition. So, English school traditions, why it's so, and what we will discuss in that, as I said, that we have to know the historical background, why that school of thought emerged, and then we will go for the key conception which is there in the international society approach. So, as I said, that international society approach or tradition, also called as or also referred as English school of or English school tradition, to understand or to explain international relations. But that school, that terminology, that English tradition or English school to understand international relations is a very narrowly defined understanding about the international society approach. So, in that sense, international schools, why international English school we call it, to understand that we have to know the basic backgrounds of that. So, as we know that in the previous classes we discussed the two important approaches of international relations, rather two dominating approach to understand international relation is the realistic school of thought or realism as an important theoretical understanding to explain international relation or dynamics of international relations. Another is the liberal school of international relations, to understand or to explain the dynamics of international relations. So, if you take the example after 1945, that is the Cold War period, rather the Cold War period, if you analyze the Cold War period, so the explanation of that Cold War period of international relation is predominantly dominated by realistic school of international relations. So the 1950s and 60s, and after that also, the discourse of international relations, the activities of the international relations, dynamics of the international relations was basically understand in the light of realistic school of international relations. In 1780s onwards, the understanding or discussion of international relations was basically dominated by the discourse or discussion or debate on neorealism and the debate between neorealism and new liberalism. So that school, that is the international school, and neorealism, new liberalism, these traditions are basically contributed by the American scholars. So the IR was basically dominated by the American scholars. So after the post Cold War period and during the Cold War period as well, in Britain there is a committee that we call as the International Committee on the Theories of International Relations. There, the theorists of international relations, basically coming from the non-American tradition or the non-American scholars, they discuss about the basic nature and characteristics of realism, liberalism, neo-realism and new liberalism. So that was basically dominated by the American scholars. In England, there was a discussions about the merits and demerits of that school of thought, which is already provided or given by the American scholar in the name of liberalism, neoliberalism, realism and neorealism. So they are not discarding that international society approach, not discarded realistic approach to international relations or the liberal school of international relations. Rather, they combined both the school of tradition to understand international relations and come up with the new version to understand international relations that we call as the international society approach. As I said, that the alternative or the other usage of the international society approach or the nomenclature of the international society approach is the English school of tradition. So it is narrowly defined, as I said in the beginning of this lecture. It is narrowly defined in a sense that few are the scholars who contributed, coming from Britain, contributed to the international society approach, and many of the scholars who contributed international society approach to international relations, they were either from Canada, Australia and some other European part, not necessarily belong or having the nationality of Britain. So in that sense, we can say that it is a narrow defined conception of international society approach. So as a whole, we call that sort of tradition as international society tradition or international society approach to international relations, to explain or to understand IR or dynamics of international relations. So this is the basic historical background, and on the basis of that, alternative or new school of thought or new school of tradition emerge in international relation that we call as the international society approach. The key components, there are various political thinkers or the expert of international relations who contributed to develop this particular theory that we call as the international society approach. In that, the particular reference we can give here is the writing or the contribution of Martin White and Hadley Bull. And in addition to that, there are various other scholars as well who actually contributed in the development of international society approach. The basic premises or the basic conception how that international society approach look at the dynamics of international relations is that they consider that the international relation, the primary actors, it not only the state. Rather, they understand international relations in that the primary actor, they refer the statecraft, the people who are actually run the state, or the people who are actually taking decision on behalf of the state. So they refer the term state people or statecraft. So in international relations, basically they referring that the role which is provided or done by these state people, for example, prime minister, for example, president, for example, diplomats, for example, military commander, they actually take decision on behalf of the state. Another important basis premises is that they focused the human aspect of international relations. In the realistic perception or the realistic explanation of international relations, they referred state as a primary actor, and their relation in the nation-state system is basically the primary thing to discuss or to understand international relations. Unlike that, the international society approach, they focused in the human-centric kind of things and more normative tendency or nature they took to understand the conception of international society. So, in that sense, they consider IR as a society of society that the key word here is that the society of sovereign state. And another terminology that they use to understand international relations is that in understanding so, they also referring the term state people, as I said. And the third important basic premises they use to explain is that that they consider IR as a social world. So three important terminology, that is the social world, state people, and IR, understanding IR as a society of the sovereign state. Three important things that they use to explain the dynamics of international relations, and that we call as the interpretations done by the international society approach. So for that matter, we also take into considerations to explain that the three tradition of international relations. Three tradition of international relation, we will take that three tradition of international relations, that is realism, rationalism, and revolutionarism. We will discuss that later on. First, what we will try to understand the philosophy of the international society approach, or the basic premises of the international society approach. In that sense, as I said, that the international society approach is not discarding the realistic premises or the realistic assumptions that the state again is the actor, primary actor, the state system rather is the reality, and the international relations is the relationship among the state in the nation-state system. But they are not limiting that explanation of the international relations to explain that. Rather, they use the term, that is the international relations is the society of the sovereign state. Society of sovereign state, which means that here we have to explain, we have to know the realistic assumptions of the international relations where the state is important and the state behave in an anarchical situation, which means that there is equal participation of the state in the nation-state system, and in the nation-state system there is a absence of any common government or absence of any agencies, common agencies or the centralized agencies that can control the behavior of the states or the selfish behavior of the state. So that explanation, that is the Hobbesian explanation of the state behavior in the nation-state system, Morgenthau and the other realistic explanation of the international relations, they argued that the state interact with the rest of the state in international relations, in that it is the state which are the primary actor in the international relations, and state behave in a selfish manner, state behave on the basis of zero-sum game, which means that the security of the state is paramount, the survival of the state is paramount, state behave just to protect the sovereignty and the integrity of that particular state in the nation-state system. And the behavior of the state in the nation-state system, in that there is a kind of anarchy which prevail in the nation-state system, and which happened, or that things happened because of the absence of any common government or any world government or any common agencies to control the selfish behavior of the state. So the anarchy is the natural phenomena which define the nature or the basic nature of the state system. If you take the new realistic approach given by Kenneth Walsh, he also talks about the structure of the state system. So that realistic point of view is not taken by the is not taken in totality by the international society approach. So the another alternative is the cooperative approach, where the state cooperate with each other, and the liberal approach to understand international relations that focus on cooperative part of the state. The state will abide the international law, abide the international values of the international organization, and the state will behave to achieve the common objective among the all states in the nation-state system, that is the economic prosperity and also the goodwill among to create goodwill among the state. So that sort of liberal interpretation of the international relation, it is also not taken in totality by the international society approach. Rather, the international society approach consider that the partial point of view which is given by the realistic approach and the half view which is given by the liberal approach to international relations, that the combination of that international society emerged to explain that the discourse of international relations. So in that sense, they accept the reality that the international system behaving in an anarchical way, and at the same time that utopian or idealist conception of the liberal approach to international relations is also not possible, because that state is not all the time behaving in a very cooperative manner, not accepting all the time the basic values of the international organizations, and also not abiding all the time international law. It is more idealistic in nature, more utopian in nature, and in practical reality the history of the international relations or the history of the people's civilization, in that the people also experience the First World War, Second World War, and the various other conflict also. And in that sense, it is very evident that the state is not following all the time the basic values on the promises of the international organization, and also not abiding all the time the international law as well. So in that sense, that utopian is not also working, and all that time anarchical situation, in that anarchical situation, state would only behave in a conflict manner. It is not also accepted by the international society approach. So the midpoint of the international society that they adopted, in that sense they call international relations or refer international relations in terms of state, in terms of society of the the system of the society of the international society of the state. Society of the state here is referring that the nation state system, in that there is an independent state, sovereign state, they interact with each other, but at the same time the state, the understanding of the state, they consider in terms of human activities as well, which means that there are some people that international society called as the state people. They are actually running the business of the state. They are taking actually decision on behalf of the state. So the international relation is more humanistic in nature, and that statecraft or the state people, their experience, historical experience in the past, the political experience in the light of history, that actually decide the decision which is taken by the state people on behalf of the state. We can take the example, for example, that the people, that is the state people, have to take decision on behalf of the state in a conflicting situation, they declare sometimes war, they behave in a cooperative manner sometimes, and also in the conflicting situation and then the cooperative situations, they have to take certain decision. So that decision is actually referring, or that decision actually reflect the experience of the state people, and the state behavior is actually controlled by the state people. So it is what? It is the society of the state, which means that there are certain norms and regulation of the society, and that norms and regulation of the society must be accepted by the state in the nation state system. So that normative approach is the basic tendency, is the another important characteristics of the international society approach. The earlier tradition of the international relations, which is behavioralistic in nature, which was more empirical in nature, more scientific in nature. So that international society approach is basically focusing on the normative aspect of the international relations, historical aspect of the international relations, and also it is more interpretive and human related or human centric sort of approach to understand international relations. So in nutshell, what we can say, that is the key assumptions or the key things that international society approach wants to propose is that the international relation is more, the understanding of international relation is normative in nature, which means that there are certain values, there are certain norms, that norms and values which is common to all the state in the nation state system, that must be preserved. And it is historical in a sense that the state is what the state they consider state as a kind of system of the state system or the society of the state. Society of the state means the society has certain common values, and that values must be preserved by the state. And state is more like kind of human activities, which means that those sort of decision which are taken by the human being, that is the state people, that are the main concern or that are the main subject matter of the interpretation of the international relations, which means that the foreign policy, which means that any policies that has the human activities which is normative in nature, value based in nature, that was considered very important to understand or to discuss international relations. So it is more a normative, philosophical, historical in nature, and it is also human based and human focused in nature. As I said that, the another important things which is very much related to that, they consider international relation as a system or the society of a state. The behavioralistic interpretation, anarchy of system of the state, anarchical system of the state, analytical international society approach focuses on the anarchical system of society. So the realistic approach focusing on the anarchical system of a state, and the international society approach focuses on the anarchical system of society, which means that they consider that the anarchy is the reality where the state behave in the anarchical situation, absence of any common government, world government, common agencies. But the international society approach consider state as a human kind of activities. So it is the society which means that the state of state system is basically based on certain norms and values. There are certain norms and values, and the state in the state system or nation state system, state society, anarchical system of society. So the basic values is what? Independence of the state, security of the state, and also to protect and preserve order and justice in the society, means in the international system. So in order to understand that sort of things, we have to take into account the various traditions, the classical tradition in international relations, how they defined state and how they define state system. So there is a different interpretation, and to know that interpretations, there are three traditions in international relations. One is the realism, another is liberalism, and third one is international society approach, and also that international political theory approach. So that two important school of thought, the classical school of thought, that is realism. The basic premises of the realism that the state is the primary actor. They focus on the survival and the security of the state, because the state is the egoistic in nature and the state trying to dominate over the other, and the major focus is the political power to achieve national interest. So power is a very important element or things in the interpretation of international relations in the light of realistic approach to international relations. The another school of thought, that is the liberal school of thought, it explains international relation in terms of freedom, cooperation, peace and progress, which is the positive aspect and the cooperative aspect of the state relation in the nation-state system. So the rules, procedure, international law, international organization, creation of international organization, and international organization as a platform to resolve dispute and to maintain international peace and security, and also abiding the international law just to regulate the behavior of the state, and the basic objective is to achieve the common goal of the state. So these two theories are very important so far as to understand international relations. The third theory, which is based on what? Which is based on shared interest, rules and institutions, which means that realistic approach of international relations, three tradition thought that explain that international relations, that two school very important to explain international relations. So that the midway and the another point of view to understand the state behavior and the state system is the three tradition that define international relation. One is realism, another is rationalism, and third one is the revolutionarism. So when we understand that sort of things, realistic approach, liberal approach, and three tradition, that is realism, rationalism and revolutionism, these three tradition of IR, that is realism, rationalism and revolutionism, is very important. They consider international society approach, and they viewed that these all three tradition is actually expressing or consider or define or interpret state system in a different way. The realistic approach, that is that they focus on anarchical situation in the nation state system, as we have already discussed that what is anarchy and why anarchy prevail in the nation state system. Third one is the power politics. Power is very important, and the national interest expressed in terms of national power. Power is the means, and power is the achieving power is the means and also the ends in itself, because it is the power through that only state can preserve and also state can protect its national security and survive in the nation state system. So that three important things, that is the state centric, survival, protection, security of the state and self-help, these are the three important key to understand the conception of realism. The next tradition is the rationalist tradition, that we also call as the rationalism. So in that rationalism, it focuses on the liberal part of the international system or international relations, which is based on what? It focuses on society, evolutionary change and peaceful coexistence. Third one is the revolutionary approach. So the first one is the Hobbesian concept of anarchical situation, and also Morgenthau, Thucydides, other scholars that interpreted realistic approach to international relations. Rationalism is basically referred by the Grotius. He also they try to explain that the peaceful coexistence is possible among the state in the nation state system. So which means that the cooperative part, the state can cooperate each other is for the common, to achieve the common goal. There is a state is the primary actor, but there is a kind of positive aspect of relations among the state in the nation state system. So state are rational state will behave like a rational being. So in rationality, in order to protect is their own interest, that is the common interest, For example, creation, for example, poverty eradication, economic development, peace, economic development. So these are certain goals that which is common in nature, and for that matter, to achieve that, the state would behave in a positive manner just to protect that, so the peaceful coexistence is possible. So in the first and second, both state is the primary actor. State is the only focal point to interpret, to analyze international relations. But the first one, that is the realistic approach, it focuses on the conflicting part and the war kind of part of the state behavior in the nation state system. And because of that, there is a constant sort of anarchical situation prevail in the nation state system. Unlike that, revolutionary concept of tradition of international relations, it focuses on the cooperative part of the state. But again, state is the primary actor, but state would behave in a cooperative manner, would behave in a more coexisting manner just to achieve the common goal. So for that matter, the state would abide the rules and regulations of the international norms, that is created by international organizations, and also they will behave in a manner to accept the basic norms of the international law as well. So that is the another tradition to explain international system. The third one, that is revolutionary in nature, that we call as the revolutionarism. So in that, the state is a primary actor, state is the actor in the international relations, but it also focusing on the humanistic part of the international relation, or the humanistic interpretation or humanity values of the values in the international relations as well. So it is revolutionary in change, and it tried to establish the global community and also the utopian nation state system, where the state is the actor, but the people's interaction and the people's values, certain norms and values related to the human being, that is equally very important. So that is the third tradition that we call as the revolutionary traditions. So that is what it is, that is the human values, the human values, and also the state as a kind of state activities in terms of humanistic interpretations. That is the another important things that is explained by the revolutionary approach to international society. So in nutshell, realistic approach is state-centric, rationalist approach again state-centric, but the revolutionary approach more about the human-centric approach to international relations, and that try to create a kind of global community, and that global community would protect the interest of the human being as well, and it is more utopian in nature. So these three traditions are very important to explain international relations. The international society approach is basically not discarding any school of tradition or any school of thought, rather they combined, or they are saying that there is a constant dialogue between the realism, rationalism and revolutionarism. There is a constant dialogue. So no one school of thought is capable enough to understand international relations in a complete manner or in a comprehensive manner. So there is a constant dialogue between three traditions, and that constant dialogue between the three traditions is actually interpreted or considered very important to understand international relations or dynamics of international relations, or the objective of the international relations, which is done or which is considered very important by the international society approach. So that is the basic things or basic theme in order to understand that sort of analysis to understand international relations. In addition to that, that international society approach is also basically focusing on that two important aspects. One is they consider, international society approach consider two important values of the international relations. One is what? Pluralistic nature of international relations, and another is the solidarity nature of international relation. So that pluralistic nature of international relations, they are saying that the state are the equal participant in the international system, which means that the interest of the state based on equal participation in the nation state system, that is very important conception in the functioning of the international relations. That is what the pluralistic concept of international relations. The another way to understand the state behavior in the nation-state system is the solidarity conception of the state behavior in the nation-state system. That solidarity conception of the state behavior or the dynamics or the nature of international relations here is that although the state are equal participant in the nation-state system, but at the same time there must be kind of the special treatment that must be done by the major powers to the weaker state in the nation-state system, which means that the extra protection, special treatment must be given to the smaller state or the weaker state in the state system, so that the state can be, the interest of the smaller state can be protected by the major powers or the bigger powers in the state system. So there must be a kind of solidarity among the various states in the state system. So there are two conceptions to understand. One is the pluralistic understanding of the state participation in the state system. Another is the solidarity conception of state behavior in the state system. So in that, the first one is the conception of equality based on the conception of equality, and the second is the conception that the smaller state in the state system must be, their interest must be protected by the other state, major state in the nation-state system. So in that, the basic is what? To achieve certain values of the society, common values of the society. That common values of the society is order, justice, equality, and also the humanity, the protection of the human rights of the human being. That is what the world system. So the international system is basically, the international society approach is basically normative in nature, and they're focusing on what? The focusing on the human-centric aspect of the state behavior in the nation-state system. So it is more philosophical in nature and historical in a sense that they consider that the experience of the state people, that is the prime minister, president, any minister, diplomats, commander, they who actually taking decision on behalf of the state, they must be considered as a main actors in the international system. So whatever choices is taken by the state, it is actually taken by the state people, and the historical experience of that state people is very much important, and that actually influencing the decision of the state peoples, while the state people is actually taking any sort of decision on behalf of the state. So another important things which is related to international society approach is that they taking importantly the realistic and the liberal approach or the three traditions of the international relations, that is the realistic approach, rationalistic approach, and the revolutionary approach, and they consider that there is a constant dialogue among these all three school of thought of international relations to explain the international dynamics of international relations in a very complete and in a very comprehensive manner. So that state people is very important, their historical experience is very important, and they consider that the international relations is not only the study of the state and their relation or the anarchical situation which prevail in the state system, rather it is more humanistic in nature, and they try to protect certain values of the society. They also not taking that the liberal approach to international relations, where the goodwill prevail, state cooperate in a behavior manner, state cooperate to achieve the mutual goal of all the state in the state system, that consider that utopia. So the international society approach consider that the state behaving in an anarchical situation, but there are certain goals of the society, goals of the nation state system that must be achieved by every state, and that goals are to creating order and achieving justice in the international system. So in that sense, that humanistic interpretation of international relations which is done by the international society approach. So it discarded the behavioralistic explanation of international relations, and they focus more on the traditional aspect of the international relations, which is based on norms, which is based on certain values, which is based on certain objective of the nation state system, and because of that Hadley Bull referring the terminology that the international system is basically what it is, the anarchical system of the sovereign society, sovereign state that create a society. So it is anarchical society, anarchical state of society, rather anarchical society of state. In place of society of state, Hadley Bull saying that it is the anarchical system of society. So that society is actually referring certain values of the thing. So in that class we have completed certain things about the international society approach, what international society approach is all about, and how that tradition is very important to understand international relations, and how they consider state people as a very important element or important things in the discussion of or in the study of international relations. In the coming class, we will discuss two important values of the international society approach, that is the order and justice. So in that class we have done. In the next class we will discuss the order and justice. Thank you.